The void beyond the Lyran spiral had always been a quiet place, at least by galactic standards. Stars drifted in slow, stately arcs, their light untroubled by the bustle of civilization. Among them, Outpost Omega-9 clung to existence like a barnacle on a cosmic hull, founded centuries earlier on the remnants of a collapsed neutron star. It was little more than a spider's web of platforms, research domes, and mining shafts tethered to a decaying orb of crystalline plasma. Yet within its rusted corridors and echoing auditoriums, humanity and its allies had made discoveries that reshaped understanding of the cosmos. On the bridge of the exploration cruiser Horizon's Edge, Captain Serena Voss stared at the holoscreen in disbelief. The ping had come without warning, an ancient distress beacon, encoded in the archaic Solarian emergency protocol, versions long since retired. It pulsed like a dying heartbeat, one flash to flash, pause, one flash to flash, pause. There was no accompanying data stream, no recorded voice message, only that repeated pattern and the ominous coordinates pointing straight to Omega-9. Behind her, Lieutenant Commander Rahul Malik adjusted the signal's frequency, running ancient decryption subroutines. Each cycle repeated the same fragment of text: beware the shroud. No signature, no identification, no plea for mercy, only the warning. Serena's gaze flicked to the planet's eyes display showing Omega-9's schematics. Once, the station had thrummed with activity. Cargo shuttles docked, patrol frigates glimmered in the outer rings, and researchers pored over exotic materials harvested from beneath the crystalline crust. Now, the entire network lay in stasis. Automated beacon transmissions had ceased 6 standard days earlier. Life sign trackers were dark. Even the floating security drones designed to patrol every crevice were offline. 6 days, Serena muttered. 6 days without a scrap of communication. Then this, she tapped her comlink. Engineering, status, slipstream drive is primed, Captain, came the reply from Chief Engineer Hao Lin. His voice, usually confident, had a trace of uncertainty. Whatever happened out there, it didn't damage the drive. We're ready the moment you give the word. Serena took a deep breath. Thank you, Hao. On my mark. Before departure, she convened her senior staff in the oval briefing chamber, a compact room ringed with monitors and a holographic table. Dr. Kira Dante, the ship's chief xenobiologist, leaned over the projection of Omega-9's central hub. Her dark eyes were sharp, controlled. There was a hunger there, scientific curiosity battling with a flicker of unease. Spores, she said quietly, pointing to a cluster of chemical readings. We detected trace amounts in the signal's modulation, fungal signatures no one's cataloged before. Could be native, could be contamination. Either way, it's unusual. Rahul frowned. He was Serena's second in command and an expert in exostrategic planning. If it's contamination, we need hazmat protocols. If it's native, well, I don't know a single xenobiologist who'd pass up a closer look. He offered Kira a wry half smile. Even you, right? Kira's lips twitched in an uneasy grin. Yes, I suppose, but I prefer living to dead. Let's hope these spores aren't as friendly as they sound. Serena rose, voice firm. Prepare to assault shuttles and the medical frigate. I want a full recon team, armed and ready. We'll attempt hails once in proximity. If we get no response, we land. On the surface, she met each officer's eyes in turn. This might be our most dangerous mission yet. Stay sharp, stay together, and come back alive. 7 minutes later, the Horizon's Edge slipped into the quantum conduit on the bridge. Time-blurred lights stretched, instruments warped, and then the stars snapped into focus again. Omega-9 floated below, a shattered orb of silence. The shuttle's Argos and Persephone detached gracefully, their exhaust plumes vanishing in the thin atmosphere. Through thermal scopes, the teams saw a station scarred by whatever calamity had struck. Dome panels were pockmarked, maintenance scaffolds had collapsed into molten slag. Detached sections of hull drifted in lazy arcs around the main structure. As the 2 shuttles docked at a reinforced airlock, Serena felt her pulse quicken. The docking clamps sealed with a hiss. Inside, the corridor lighting was dimmed to emergency red. The airlock's inner door slid open to reveal a tunnel half filled with debris. Twisted scaffolding, toppled crates, and patches of an iridescent residue that shimmered like oil on water. Lt. Elena Chan, officer of the watch, swept the corridor with her scanning rifle. No life signs so far, she reported, but radiation levels are through the roof in some sections. Magnetic anomalies, too. She aimed her tricorder at a stained bulkhead. This filament organic, I think, but it's fused with metal. It's alive. Dr. Dottie stepped forward, eyes widening. She crouched beside the mass, scanning. This isn't just contamination. These filaments pseudopods maybe are weaving into the station's wiring. They're feeding off electrical currents and structural material. Whatever we're looking at is rewriting its own genetic code in real time. Rahul's jaw tightened. All right, move out in teams of 3. Serena, Malik, and Chan take the lead to Central Command. Kira, you and your medics sweep the labs. Keep comm channels open. He tapped his helmet, where a live feed icon blinked. Remember, minimal noise, no sudden movements. We don't know how this organism perceives threats. Serena led them down the corridor. The metallic scent of ozone and burned circuitry thick in the air. Every footstep echoed. Faint flickers of movement danced in the periphery shadows that dissolved when she turned her head. At the junction, to the central hub, a distant moan reverberated. It was incomprehensible, part mechanical grinding, part organic lament. The team froze. It came from ahead, whispered Elena. They advanced, rifles raised, flashlights cutting through the gloom. In the heart of Omega-9, they found the data core domes. Dozens of server towers stood like blackened tombstones. Glass canisters containing exotic life forms, microbial arrays, arthropod arrays. Synthetic bioconstructs were fractured and empty. On the floor lay bodies, scientists in silver lab coats, engineers still clutching tools, security officers, crouched as though seeking cover. No visible wounds. Their faces were placid, eyes open, staring at some unseen point above. Serena knelt beside one scientist, brushing her gloved hand across a handprint smeared in that same iridescent substance. Kira, she called softly. Kira knelt by the nearest body, scanning. Time of death, roughly 6 days ago, she murmured. At the moment communications went dark. A sudden pulse of static crackled through their comm links. A fragmented voice distorted. Broken whispered just beneath the threshold of hearing. Beware, shroud. The words drifted away like smoke, swallowed by the station's darkness. Serena's chest tightened. That's our signal. We're too close to ignore it. I want everyone back to meters. Begin scanning for transmission origin. Elena's tricorder chirped. Signal strongest at the reactor control nexus. It's inside. The team exchanged a glance. Reactor control was on the other side of the file archives, 2 wings over. Through more debris-filled corridors. As they rose to retrace their path, the lights flickered. The station groaned. Metal beams flexed ominously. Sparks flew along overhead conduits. The iridescent filaments quivered, as if stirred by an unseen wind. Then, a low rumble like a pained roar, and the station shivered. A section of corridor ahead buckled, panels twisting. The onboard gravity compensators juddered. Everything was about to change. Serena raised her rifle. Stay calm, move out, and hold the line. Behind her, the first flicker of living darkness crawled over the wall, an alive shadow, inching toward them with purpose. The crew braced themselves against what might be their first encounter with the shroud itself, and somewhere deep within, the heart of Omega-9, the signal's source pulsed brighter for a moment, as if to herald the true awakening of a horror the galaxy had never known. The docking clamps retracted with a hiss, and the assault shuttles Argos and Persephone cut free from the horizon's edge, like twin comets on a collision course. Captain Serena Voss watched from the observation bay as the stations jagged. Silhouette grew against the star-strewn velvet, beneath layers of reinforced hull. Omega-9 had once gleamed silver and cobalt. Now its facets were scorched and fractured, as if some gargantuan beast had clawed at its surface. All teams, report. Serena's voice crackled through the comm link. Alpha team in position. Came Elena Chan's clipped reply. Airlock sealed. Environmental readings are unstable temperature fluctuations, pockets of toxic byproducts, and intermittent depressurization near the mining shafts. Bravo team en route to labs, added Dr. Kira Dante, her her tone tight with anticipation. "I've detected pockets of biodiversity residue in the xenobotany wing. If it's tied to those fungal signatures, we could be looking at a new phylogenetic kingdom." Serena exhaled. "Proceed with caution. Keep weapons ready, but hold fire unless absolutely necessary. We don't yet know if this is an intelligent threat or an environmental hazard." The choking Halst airlock's inner door slid open to reveal a corridor bathed in crimson emergency lighting. Steam hissed through ruptured conduits, distorting the beams of the Marines' helmets. At Serena's side, Rahul Malik raised his scanner, riding a pulse of static that flickered against the walls. "Readings on the filament network are spiking," he murmured. "I can barely get a lock on molecular structure, but it's not just organic or synthetic. It's both." The filaments wove into the steel frames of the corridor, trailing down pipes and merging with circuitry. They pulsed gently, as though breathing. Elena Chan knelt beside one iridescent strand, gingerly prodding it with the butt of her rifle. "Feels like rubber." "No, cartilage. Look at this," she said, pointing to a section where the filament had split open to reveal a glistening cavity. Cavities filled with something black and viscous, like they're harvesting the station itself. As they advanced, a wave of motion rippled through the shadows. Something scuttled across the wall above limbs too many to count, joints bending at impossible angles. A spray of phosphorescent spores drifted down in a lazy spiral, coating the Marines' visors in a fine, sickly yellow dust. Kira's voice tightened with alarm. "Spores are psychotropic mild hallucinations at these concentrations, but if inhaled in quantity..." She tapped her mask, flicking on the biofilter. "Everyone check your filters. We can't risk cognitive degradation." The first encounter rounding a jagged corner, Alpha Team entered the anti-grav loading bay. Crates lay overturned. Automated forklifts lay in ruin, their chassis entangled in the filaments. Beneath the wreckage, a lone figure stirred. A technician, clad in a patchwork of lab and mining gear, slumped against the bulkhead. Serena knelt to examine his vitals. His skin was pale, lips cracked, his eyes stared sightlessly upward. "Medic," she barked. To corpsemen darted forward, shields drawn. After a tense moment, the technician's chest heaved in a ragged breath. He gasped for air. "You're too late." His voice was hoarse, laced with fever. "It knows we're here." He coughed, expelling a sputter of shimmering spores. The shroud it grew from the reactor core. It tasted our fear before they could calm him. His eyes rolled back, and he slid into catatonia. Kira throttled the scanner over him, frowning. "No infection vectors in his bloodstream, but neural pathways are burnt. He's gone." Into the reactor Nexus with heavy hearts, Serena rallied her team. "Objective, reactor Nexus. We trace the distress, signal there, and find out what really happened." The path wound through maintenance tunnels where the filaments had woven through lighting fixtures. Like lethal vines, sparks crackled as electrical currents flirted with short circuits. The corridors tilted and buckled, the stations artificial. Gravity faltered in adjacent sections, making each step a fight against vertigo. Halfway there, the lights extinguished. Absolute darkness swallowed the team. A low hum emerged, building into a resonance that pulsated through their suits. Malik's scanner roared to life-wild spikes of electromagnetic energy. "It's drawing power," he shouted above the rising drone. "Power from the station's grid and tire wings are being siphoned." The resonance coalesced into a physical force. Bulkheads vibrated. Warning klaxons pierced the gloom in fractured staccato. Filaments slithered across the deck plates, converging toward a grated door at the end of the hall. Beyond that door lay the reactor Nexus. The heart of the beast at the reactor's threshold. Elena Chen drafted a tactical plan. "We breach together. Serena, lead on point. Rahul, you're on demolition. Kira, stand by for analysis. I'll cover our rear." They shoved the door open. Inside, the reactor core glowed with an eerie violet luminescence. Dozens of filamentous tendrils snaked around the containment unit, pulsating like the beating of an abomination's heart. The central energy coil had fused with organic tissue metal and flesh fused in a grotesque symphony of life and machinery. Dr. Dottie raised her scanner. "These tendrils aren't parasitic. They're symbiotic, feeding on the reactor's energy and rewriting their DNA to better absorb photons. They're rapidly evolving. Serena nodded grimly. The distress call looped. Beware the shroud. This is the shroud. She raised her rifle. Opened fire. Bolts of plasma lanced into the tendrils, searing through the biometal fusion. The shroud reacted as a single organism. Tendrils retracted, only to sprout thicker, stronger branches. A deafening shriek, part electronic feedback, part guttural. Roar shattered the room. The ground trembled as if the station itself was crying out. Malik set charges at the core's support struts. This reactor has to go, he yelled. If we collapse the core, we collapse the shroud's power source. Kira scrambled to decode the transmitter logs. I'm tracing the beacon's pattern. It's encoded in a harmonic frequency that resonates with the filament's growth cycle. If we disrupt the reactor's field, it will sever their network, but it will also trigger a meltdown. A beat of silence. Choice lay before them: sacrifice the station to cripple the shroud, or retreat and risk letting it escape. Serena's eyes flicked over her people. Rig the charges. We collapse the core. Get to the evac point now. Flight through darkness. Malik armed the last charge. The shroud mounted a desperate counterattack. Tendrils lashed out, slamming into the team. Elena Chan fired point blank, incinerating limbs of the entity that brushed too close. Sparks and spores erupted in a hellish conflagration. Dr. Dottie grabbed the holodrive she'd prepared. Raw data on the shroud's physiology. This is everything we know. If we're too late, at least the galaxy has a chance. Serena nodded. Move, evac point in 90 seconds or this place will vaporize. They sprinted back through twisting corridors, the station's groans, and the shroud's howls at their heels. Plasma burns coated the walls. Filament fragments sparked and writhed, snatching at ankles and elbows. Elena placed explosive charges on bulkhead seals. To buy them time, each detonation sealing off a corridor behind them. At the airlock, the medical frigate's ramp descended in a burst of hydraulic hiss. Team members poured through as alarm sirens reached a crescendo. Serena was last. She turned to witness the reactor's core shudder, then explode in a flare of violet light that engulfed the station's heart. A shockwave threw her forward. She landed at the foot of the ramp, battered, but breathing. Through the viewport, Omega-9's outer shell buckled inward, massive chunks of metal and organic matter cascading toward the abyss. As the Argos and Persephone disengaged, rocket trails carving arcs through the thin atmosphere. Serena's gloved hand tightened on her helmet. Around her, the crew was shaken, many wounded, but alive. Dr. Dante's data holodrive glowed reassuringly in her pack. We did it, Malik panted. We really did it. For now, Serena replied, her voice steadier than she felt. But the shroud was more than we imagined. We destroyed its cradle, but the entity itself. She looked toward the charred remains of Omega-9, receding into the horizon. It's out there, somewhere, and it's coming. Below, the station's broken silhouette slipped beneath clouds of dust and flame. Somewhere in the darkness, a wounded creature stirred, its tendrils reaching out into the void, hungry, intelligent, and ready to reshape the galaxy in its own horrific image. The silence in orbit was deceiving. The recovery flotilla to assault shuttles, the medical frigate Aegis, and the horizon's edge hovered above the crippled bones of Omega-9, the station's broken hull drifting like a wounded leviathan. Captain Serena Voss stood on the horizon's edge's bridge, eyes locked on the debris field. Around her, sensor rays blinked with ghostly echoes of wreckage and biological detritus. Shockwave and silence seconds after the reactor's final collapse. A shockwave rippled through the debris, an energy pulse that overshot the station itself. On the Argos, Lieutenant Elena Chan was thrown from her feet as consoles sparked and alarms shrieked. Through the viewport, she saw tendrils of darkness bloom from the pyre of Omega-9, reaching into the void like the limbs of a colossal spider. What the hell is that? She gasped, scrambling to her feet. Back on the horizon's edge, sensors flared red. Unidentified mass exiting station ruins, intoned the tactical AI, growth rate exponential, mass composed of biometallo-organic material. Serena felt her throat tighten. It can't be. We collapsed the reactor. It should have taken the shroud with it. rescue and revelation still clinging to consciousness. The technician they'd rescued in the loading bay lay in a med bay pod on the Aegis. Dr. Kira Dante monitored his vital signs, trembling as spore. Filaments writhed beneath the transparent canopy. His synapses are being overwritten. She muttered, the shroud's network has grafted onto his nervous system. He's a living transmitter. But before she could intervene, an explosion rocked the Aegis. Fragmented filament spores had infiltrated the docking clamp seated during the frantic evacuation. They erupted in a cloud of shimmering dust that flooded the corridors. Med pods cracked, synth fluid leaked, and the surviving crew stumbled in panic. A voice on the comlink, containment breach. All personnel seal off compartment Delta. Serena ordered the Horizon's Edge to maintain distance. We can't risk our ship, but we can't leave the Aegis to become ground zero. Rahul Malik, her first officer, engaged the shuttles, Argos, and Persephone, form a perimeter. Distribute sonic emitters, try to keep that mass from growing. The Leviathan awakens from the station's debris. The shroud coalesced. It was no longer tendrils, but a single, undulating gestalt, a writhing sphere of metal flesh. Dozens of meters across, its surface alive with convergence of bioluminescent veins. It pulsed, ripping energy from the ambient reactor fragments, and then thrust outward in a silent lunge. The Argos' point defense lasers chewed at its surface, carving molten scars. The mass shuddered, fractured, then reckoned itself in seconds stronger, more massive. Elena Chen watched in horror as pieces of filament peeled off and dove toward her shuttle, melting its hull. Evasive maneuvers, now, she screamed. On board the Persephone, the boarding party prepared sonic cannons calibrated by Kira's data. But as they charged, the shroud sent a shockwave of psionic resonance and unearthly vibration that rattled bone and circuit alike. Systems overloaded. Crew staggered, keening. Two Marines collapsed, eyes rolling back as their neural link fused with black filaments. Battle in the void. Serena activated the Horizon's Edge's gravitic harpoons, experimental tethers. Designed to snatch derelict craft, they bit into the shroud's periphery, but the entity fought back, compressing the tendrils and tearing free. The harpoons recoiled, dragging the frigate closer to the wreckage. Abort, she cried. Release the lines, but the Aegis answered first. Within its sealed compartments, the shroud had gained entry to the central power grid. It siphoned energy, supercharging itself through the viewport. The crew saw the frigate's fusion drive flare in violent arcs, then implode in a burst of violet plasma that rocked every vessel in the flotilla. A moment of stunned silence followed. Then, Captain, we're under direct threat. Rahul's voice crackled. The shroud has grown again 20 meters across and counting. Serena's jaw set. We can't fight it head on. It feeds on our weapons. We need a new plan. Desperate. Measures back on the bridge. Kira worked feverishly at a data console. The shroud's neural lattice resonates at harmonic frequencies. If we overload it with a polymodal sonic photon blast synchronized pulse from all ships, it could destabilize its binding matrix. Serena pointed to the inert Persephone. Can we salvage its emitters? Elena, battered but alive, joined them. The cannons are intact, but we'll need fusion power to drive them. We can't spare full thrusters unless we use the Argos as a power relay. Malik turned to engineering. How can you jury-rig cargo bay capacitors to boost the Argos' reactor output? Channel into the Persephone's emitter. A chorus of affirmative replies. Time ticked down as the shroud drifted closer, spore clouds fanning outward, coating hulls in corrosive biofilm. It was a living contagion, growing stronger with every heartbeat. Sacrificial gambit once you're ready, Serena said, voice resolute. We coordinate. Horizon's Edge will fire the first photon salvo, drawing its focus. Argos will divert its excess power into Persephone. At the moment of peak energy, we unleash the sonic photon blast. A tense countdown began in the void. The shroud sensed its adversaries lining up. Filaments flickered with anticipation. It erected defenses, barriers of dense biomass that glowed with malicious intent. 3, 2, 1. The Horizon's Edge's fusion projector flared, a blinding disk of light that seared the shroud's surface. It recoiled, tendrils lashing like whips, simultaneously. The Argos channeled every spare joule into the Persephone's emitters. The cannon doors opened with a hiss, revealing twin sonic photon projectors. On Elena's mark, the Persephone unleashed its payload, a cascading wave of pure sound locked to ultraviolet photon pulses. The effect was instantaneous, like tearing cloth. The shroud convulsed, fracturing in places, its once united surface fissuring. The filaments writhed and peeled away, shriveling under the assault. For a breathless moment, victory hovered in the void. Then the shroud struck back with its ultimate defense, a psionic scream that shattered hull plating and silenced the comlinks. The projectors overloaded and exploded, sending the Persephone spinning into the darkness. Its bow sheared away. Serena stared at the devastation, heart pounding. "Mayday," she whispered. "All ships abort mission. We're leaving now." But as the remaining crews scrambled, the shroud did not pursue. Instead, it collapsed inward on itself, shrinking into a dense orb of black energy no larger than a shuttle. It hovered for a second above the horizon's edge before vanishing in a silent flash, slipping into slipstream between realities. The rescue flotilla drifted, broken and bereft. The Persephone was gone, the Aegis a charnel house, Omega-9 reduced to cosmic tinder. Only the horizon's edge and the crippled Argos remained. Silence reclaimed the void dot as systems rebooted and the wounded were tended. Serena gathered her officers. Kira's data pad glowed with an ominous readout. The shroud had extracted itself from Omega-9, but its mass had been neither destroyed nor contained. It had retreated into slipstream, and now it had a vector. It's headed for the corward corridor, Kira said. Estimated arrival, 48 standard hours. Rahul, voice grave, whispered, "We just unleashed a horror on the galaxy." Serena's gaze hardened, resolve stealing. "Then we alert every star system. Issued a red alert across Federation space. Every ship must be on guard. We'll track it, and we'll end this before the shroud arrives to finish what it started." But as she spoke, deep within the warp conduit where physics frayed and time warped, a ripple of living darkness pulsed, hungry, relentless, and infinitely patient. The shroud was free, and in 2 days' time, the galaxy would know true terror. The horizon's edge drifted through silent space, its hull scarred by the collisions and close calls of the past 2 standard days. The crew moved like ghosts, through corridors still stained with biofilm and ash. Many had lost friends, some still bore the twitching remnants of the shroud's spores beneath their skin. Quiet dread hung in every cabin and on every bridge. Wounded and weary in sick bay, Dr. Kira Dante and her medical team worked around the clock. The survivors from Omega-9 and the flotilla lay in rows of med pods, connected to life support and neural stimulators. Many eyes fluttered behind bandages. Others were glazed in shock. Kira monitored neural scans, searching for signs of the shroud's lingering influence. "Patient 47, she murmured to her assistant, "is showing a delta wave spike deep. REM, he's reliving the invasion." The young ensign twitched, whispering under sedation, "Beware, the shroud." Across the room, Chief Engineer Howlin examined a damaged sonic emitter component. "We can't rely on these weapons forever," he told Serena when she entered. "The shroud adapts. We need something more permanent if it ever resurfaces." Serena ran a tired hand through her hair. "Agreed. Kira, how long before we're safe to reactivate the slipstream engines for a deep space jump?" "I don't want this thing anywhere near inhabited systems." Kira checked her tablet. "I've quarantined the spores in cargo hold C3. If we purge the atmosphere and scrub all surfaces, we can be clear in 12 hours. But that's only if we run full decontamination." Serena nodded. "Do it, and alert the galactic authorities. Any one of the Council's sector stations would give us refuge. We'll need supplies, weapons, and most important, intelligence." Red alert across the Council message went out on every secure channel. Omega-9 destroyed. Shroud entity escaped. All Federation and allied worlds, prepare defenses. Do not engage alone. On New Helion, the Galactic Council chamber, usually a place of diplomacy and debate, became a hive of emergency sessions. Holoprojections of sensor readings from the horizon's edge filled the vast domed hall. Senator Dravos of the Andaric, Collective slammed his gauntleted fist on the polished stone dais. This is a threat beyond any known weapon. We cannot wait for it to breach our borders. His voice echoed through the chamber, igniting murmurs of nervous assent. Ambassador Kyra Taldane of the Terran Union stood. We must act swiftly but with coordination. Blunt force will only drive the shroud deeper into slipstream. We need a plan to lock down dimensional fractures research. Duchenne Labs on phase field suppressors may hold the key. A chorus of debate followed. Proposals to retrofit every starship with sonic photon rays, to deploy planetary shield networks, to station research frigates at the known slipstream nodes. Across the cosmos, shipyards retooled factories, forging emitters and sonic coils, while planetary governments raised militias and fortified orbital defenses. Ghosts of the past back aboard the horizon's edge, the crew gathered in the observation lounge, a silent crowd against the panoramic viewport. Below them, the coreward corridor shimmered like a wound-in spacetime. Somewhere beyond the stars lay the slipstream rift through which the shroud had fled. Lieutenant Commander Rahul Malik addressed them. We've lost good people. We've seen horrors no one should ever see. But this is when we stand firm. We'll chart the shroud's trail through slipstream, develop a vector lock, and if it tries to emerge anywhere near inhabited space, we'll be waiting. Murmurs of agreement rose. The survivors, battered and sleep-deprived, straightened. In uniforms still strewn with ash and filament fragments. They were a fractured fleet all their own now, each scar avowed. Serena stepped forward. Her voice was soft but carried steel. We will find it. We will end this, not just for Omega-9, not just for the Aegis or the Persephone, but for every world that believes itself safe in the cold dark. We have the data, we have the resolve, and we have each other. Into the unknown. 12 hours later, the horizon's edge completed decontamination. The air was fresh, the corridors gleamed under white lights, and the sonic photon batteries glowed ready. In the hold, crates of phase field emitters stood alongside experimental gravitic harpoons. Hope forged in urgency. Captain Voss activated the slipstream ray. The starfield fractured into prismatic streaks. Crew secured themselves for the jump. Fear and determination warred in every heart. As the ship dove into the rift, a final combrake crackled in from New Helion. Council mandate. Operation Shroudfall is greenlit. All available forces to converge on recon reported rift points. May fate favor the brave. Serena's fingers hovered over the console. Hold tight, she whispered. We're going after the shroud. A pulse of energy. Then the universe snapped forward. Stars rushed past in brilliant lines. Ahead, where space itself seemed torn open, lay the theater of their next battle, the unknown heart of the abyss where the shroud awaited. And as the horizon's edge vanished into the void, its wake carried a message to every corner of the galaxy. No darkness is absolute, no horror unconquerable. The shroud may have unleashed terror beyond imagining, but in the unity of countless worlds, even the deepest shadows would yield to the light.